A scream tore through the Arizona desert night. "It's too big. I can't bear it," Neil cried out, her voiciero, her tall, powerful body trembling on the hastily laid bed of dried hay in the wooden cabin. Sweat and tears mingled as they streamed down the strained muscles of a once fearless Apache warrior. Now that very body was betraying her. Jack Harlan knelt behind her, holding Neil tightly, as if letting go for even a second would cause her to shatter before his eyes. A farmer who had once faced sandstorms, droughts, and the death of his wife. But never had he felt this helpless. Outside, the desert wind howled through the old wooden planks. There were no neighbors, no town nearby, just a lone cabin, a terrified man and a woman fighting on the fragile edge between life and death. No one in the tribe had ever believed Neil could be a mother. They said her body was too big, too strong, too different. Those whispers had followed her all through her youth until the day the tribe turned their backs on her, calling her a mistake of nature. Jack had once thought their marriage was nothing more than a deal. A widowed man who needed strong hands on his ranch. A rejected woman in need of a roof over her head. No love, no children, no strings attached. But now, in the midst of Neil's agonized groans and gasping breaths, Jack realized a cruel truth. One single night of weakness had pushed the strongest woman he had ever known to the brink. And if Neil did not make it through this night, he would have to live the rest of his life with a question that would never have an answer. Was this late-blooming love worth the price of her life? Before that scream tore through the night, Neil had grown used to living in silence. She was raised among the Apache tribe with a body that stood out taller than most men, broad-shouldered and limbs built like they were meant for war. While the other girls learned to dance, to weave, and dreamed of families, Neil learned to ride horses through sandstorms and haul the carcasses of game animals that weighed twice as much as she did. At first, the tribe took pride in that strength. But as Neil reached the age of motherhood, the way people looked at her began to change. The tribal healer shook his head. Then came the white doctor brought in from a distant town. The conclusion was brutally identical. Narrow pelvis. Childbirth would be extremely dangerous. She could die on a bed of hay. He said as if he were talking about the weather. From that day on, Neil was no longer spoken of as a woman, just a warrior, unnecessary, a body too big to be a mother, too different to be accepted. She left the tribe on a morning with no goodbyes, just a horse, a bag of belongings, and whispers trailing behind her. It was during those wandering days that Neil met Jack Harlan. Jack was a widowed farmer living alone on the edge of Arizona. His wife had died giving birth to their first child, a wound that never truly healed. His ranch needed labor. He needed hands strong enough to battle the unforgiving land. Their first conversation was brief, cold, and to the point. "I'm not looking for a wife," Jack said. "I'm not looking for a husband," Neil replied. They married like signing a survival pact. No ceremony, no promises of love, no dreams of children, just two people cast aside by life, leaning on each other to make it through. Jack made it clear from the beginning. His voice low and firm. "My wife died in childbirth. I don't want that to happen again. I just need someone strong beside me. I don't want children." Null nodded to her. That was not a loss. It was only a confirmation of what she had always known. This body was not made to be a mother. The first few months passed quietly. They worked side by side, spoke little, and never touched the painful memories that haunted them. Two closed-off souls, believing that this agreement would shield them from being hurt once more. But some cracks, no matter how deeply buried, are only waiting for the day they break open. That night arrived quietly, like every other night on the Arizona frontier. The wind whispered low through wooden fences. A thin moon hung in the cloudless sky. The ranch lay still in the kind of silence Jack Harlan had grown used to ever since the day his wife died in this very bed. It was the anniversary of her death. Jack drank more than usual. The bottle of whiskey slowly emptied while memories poured in. The image of the woman from years ago returned with brutal clarity. Cold hands, fading breath, and the sound of a newborn's cry that barely made it into the world before becoming the last thing she ever left behind. Neil sat across from him, quietly mending a torn sack. She could feel the weight of his pain, even though Jack had never spoken of it. The small room grew heavy with everything neither of them dared to say. Tonight, Jack finally spoke. His voice roughened by liquor. Tonight I do not want to be alone. Njal looked up. The oil lamp cast her face in a warm glow, calm but wary. We made it clear, she said slowly. Jack lowered his head, hands clenched tight. When he looked up again, the logic of a cautious man was gone from his eyes, replaced by the fragility of someone terrified of being alone. Just one night, he said. Let me forget. Let me not remember. Neil stood, taking a step back. She understood that feeling. She had lived with it her entire life. But the fear inside her ran just as deep, the doctor said. Jack added quickly, as if trying to convince himself, almost impossible to get pregnant. There will be no consequences. That sentence hung in the air more dangerous than any blade. Neil was silent for a long time. The old whispers echoed in her mind. Not meant to be a mother. Too big, too different. Maybe she thought they were right. Maybe this body truly could not bring life into the world. And in that single moment, a moment where both believed they were safe. Neil nodded. No promises, no love, just two bare souls trying to patch the emptiness inside with fleeting closeness. The oil lamp dimmed. Darkness swallowed the room. Jack did not know that on the very night he tried to escape his loneliness, he had unknowingly planted the seed of his greatest fear. And Neil did not know that the first time she allowed herself to let down her guard was the exact moment fate began to demand its price. That morning arrived slower than usual. Neil stood in the middle of the ranch yard, desert wind whipping through her long, sweat-soaked black hair. She bent over and dry, heaved by the wooden fence. Both hands gripping a post as if the ground beneath her were tipping. This feeling was not just exhaustion. It was not just stomach pain. It ran deeper, heavier, and more terrifying. When Neil placed a hand on her stomach, she knew no need for a healer, no need for confirmation. The body once called incapable of giving birth was now carrying a life inside it. Jack returned from the stables and found her standing there in silence, her face stone cold. When Neil looked up at him, her eyes no longer held their usual calm, but something sharper, laced with anger and dread. You said there would be no consequences, she said, her voice low but trembling. You said the doctor said it was almost impossible. Jack froze. What came next hit him like a hammer to the chest. I am pregnant. Silence fell over the ranch. The wind stopped blowing. The birds stopped singing. All Jack could hear was the pounding of his own heart in his ears. No doubt it can't be. He stammered. They said, be quiet. Null cut him off. You gambled with my life for one night of weakness. She stepped forward, each movement heavy, as if crushing all the whispered doubts of her tribe beneath her feet. I told you from the beginning, I could die giving birth. Jack backed away, then suddenly dropped to his knees on the hard ground. A man who had never yielded to drought or poverty, now trembled like a child. I was wrong, he said, voice cracking. I was selfish. I only thought about my own loneliness. Neil closed her eyes. In that moment, the image of Jack's late wife